Do you know what happened to his wife?
Yeah, I know she got killed. If you're doing this as an interrogation, you're saying, hey, I'm a suspect. Well, now I got a problem with, so now, I
When Sherri Rasmussen lost her life, the city mourned. When the case went cold, her father refused to stop asking questions. And when the DNA came back, decades later, it pointed not to a thief, but to a cop. This murder documentary video unravels how a decorated officer became the killer inside the police force. Let's begin. Stephanie Lazarus is identified as the prime suspect in a 23-year-old homicide. But she isn't just any name on a list. She's an LAPD detective. The victim was Sherri Rasmussen, a promising young nurse, and Sherri's husband, John Ruetten, once shared a past with Stephanie. On the evening of February 24, 1986, the comfortable rhythm of their lives collapsed. That night would mark the beginning of a tragedy that lingered for 23 years without resolution.
You didn't harm your wife, did you, John?
No, I didn't. Good. She had everything going. I mean, she...
Hey, so do you. Hey, John. What was the first thing you saw?
Saw her lying on the ground. I knew right away that she was dead.
When John discovered his wife unresponsive on their living room floor, detectives turned their scrutiny on him. A lie detector test suggested deception, but no physical evidence tied him to the scene.
Now, John, she's not having any problems with an ex-boyfriend or you with an ex-girlfriend.
No.
Has anybody been hitting on her, following her home, or anything like that at all?
No.
He was released, and the investigation went cold, a mystery frozen in time. Through the decades, Sherri's father, Nuys Rasmussen, refused to let the case die. He replayed their final phone call endlessly, certain that something Sherri mentioned that day held the answer.
She said that the person that was following her had eyes that could penetrate you. They could see right through you.
Sherri's father said his daughter had described a woman who made her uneasy. A woman who, Nuys later realized, resembled his daughter's husband's former girlfriend. That woman was Detective Stephanie Lazarus, one of Los Angeles' own. For investigators, the possibility that a fellow officer might be involved was almost unthinkable.
Please have a seat. So, this is, I didn't want to bring this up in front of your squad, but...
I mean, if you guys are claiming that I'm a suspect, then, I got a problem with that. Is that what you're saying?
We're trying to figure out what happened, Stephanie.
At about 6 o'clock that evening, John returned home to their townhouse. The garage door stood open. Sherri's car was gone, which wasn't unusual. She managed the nursing unit at Glendale Adventist and was often called in for emergencies. But when John reached the top of the stairs, the front door was slightly open. Inside, Sherri lay motionless. He called for help.
It's kind of an eerie feeling to be here after 30 plus, almost 40 years. As I walked in, I saw Sherri Rasmussen on the ground. She had been covered with a towel, and one of the paramedics raised the towel for me to see her face, and she had considerable trauma to her face. This is actually a murder.
Responding officers stepped into chaos. Electronics toppled, cords scattered, a scene staged to look like a burglary. They noted that Sherri's wrists had been bound, her left arm bore a deep bite, and she had been severely injured by a firearm. Marks on the front door hinted at a desperate fight for survival. While he was recounting the horrifying details to his colleagues, the policeman suddenly heard a soft cry coming from the dining room.
I noticed John Ruetten. He was sitting at the table and he seemed to be sobbing. His crying should have been more extreme, with his wife laying there on the floor dead.
He said he forgot to set the alarm and didn't remember locking the door. Sherri was still in bed, and he insisted the neighborhood was safe, details that only deepened suspicion. Seasoned detectives found the break-in theory strange. Burglars prefer quick exits near the street, not homes buried in the middle of a complex. Why choose this unit?
Burglars don't usually pick a place 5 condos from the street. They want to get away. They pick something next to the street. It's just strange that they would pick this place. I thought to myself, this is a burglary?
Uncle John and Aunt Sherri are spending Christmas with Rachel on her first Christmas. Sherri was all about family. Sherri was my big sister. She was my best friend. She would always encourage people, and she always exuded confidence. I am the oldest sister of Sherri Rasmussen. My dad had called, and he told me that Sherri had been killed. I just started screaming. I couldn't believe it.
To understand the loss, you have to know who Sherri Rasmussen was. Gifted from childhood, she finished school early, earned a master's degree by 23, and taught nursing at UCLA.
A very good listening technique is while you're doing it, the eye contact. That gives the nonverbal clue to the patient that you are, in fact, listening.
She was known for warmth, focus, and leadership. A nurse patients trusted instantly. When she was about to turn 41, Sherri became director of nursing at Glendale Adventist Hospital. In 1984, she met John Ruetten, an engineer with an easy smile. Friends described them as inseparable, genuinely in love.
I first remember hearing about John when Sherri called me and told me that she had met somebody at a party. 3 weeks later, I went out there and met John for the first time. I asked John, "How did you meet Sherri?" And he told me that he saw Sherri from across the room. She had this beautiful smile and laugh. Just seeing him say that and hearing him, I was happy for Sherri.
They looked great together. They were affectionate. And I loved John because my sister loved John.
But Sherri's father's joy would later turn to disbelief when he learned of her death and that the call delivering the news came not from John, but from John's father.
Telling me that Sherri had been murdered. And so I told his dad, I want to talk to John. And he said, John doesn't feel like talking.
When the families met afterward, John stayed silent, saying the police had told him not to speak. The distance unsettled everyone. John's silence was unreadable. The Rasmussens didn't know whether to read it as the expression of a man lost in the wake of tragedy, or as a sign that someone was hiding a secret that could change everything.
I thought his behavior was odd. He wouldn't talk to us. He was more concerned about himself than about Sherri.
Basic Homicide 101. Look at the spouse. It's in her own home. Her husband had just left her that morning. She hasn't been anywhere. You don't have to be a detective to think, I wonder if he did.
As John entered the interrogation room with the detective, Nels watched in silence. Deep down, the 51-year-old knew his son-in-law was lying. Because a year before Sherri lost her life, the signs of danger had begun to appear around her. Rasmussen recalled something his daughter had recently confided. A mysterious person had been shadowing her.
She mentioned she had been followed 5 different times in the last week.
This person kept appearing in places that Sherri would go. She couldn't go out to the store or go to the gym without having this person show up.
And she said that the person that was following her had eyes that could penetrate you. They could see right through you.
Soon after, another figure entered the picture, John's former girlfriend. A co-worker witnessed her arrive at Sherri's hospital office in provocative clothing and warned that if she couldn't have John, nobody would.
She told me that John's ex-girlfriend had come to her office at the hospital, dressed provocatively,
and confronted Sherri about John and said that if she couldn't have John, nobody could.
Despite these warnings, investigators told Nels the death looked like a botched robbery. They claimed the killer took only Sherri's purse and car. Nels didn't buy it. He insisted they look into the woman who had threatened his daughter.
Sherri never disclosed a name for the ex-girlfriend. It would have been nice had we had that, because we would have shared that with the detectives.
He even reported an earlier incident. The ex-girlfriend allegedly forced her way into Sherri's townhouse and physically confronted her before fleeing.
One of the original detectives in this case told me personally they had never heard any of those alleged incidents, and none of them were entered into the official case record known as the murder book.
At a memorial service soon after, John spoke publicly about Sherri for the last time, calling her his everything. Nels listened, torn between sorrow and anger, feeling justice slipping away.
I just want to thank you all for coming, and I want you to know that Sherri was the best professional in the world. She was the best wife that anybody could ever have, and she was the best sister and daughter. She wanted to make everybody happy.
Weeks passed, no new leads. Detectives doubled down on their burglary theory, brushing off the family's pleas as imagination fueled by crime shows.
The first 5 weeks, I mentioned it so many times that he kind of lost his cool with me and saying that there was no need to go there because there was nothing there.
Then another break-in occurred less than a mile away. 2 young men surprised a homeowner, one pointing a revolver before fleeing. Sherri, too, had suffered fatal injuries from a handgun. Sketches were drawn, comparisons made. For a moment, hope flickered. Maybe these were the same men. A police artist spoke to the woman at her home. She said she saw 2 young men near the scene, and based on her description, the artist sketched their faces. Same neighborhood, same time, same weapon. But there was one big difference. This time, no one was hurt. Convinced the 2 cases were related, detectives fanned out across the city, posting pictures of the suspect everywhere from bus stations to coffee shops. Months later, police recovered Sherri's car and purse, both wiped clean, and then silence. For the next 15 years, nothing changed.
I had come to the conclusion in my mind that it was never going to be solved, and it was something that I would have to deal with, the unknown of what happened.
By 1991, Nuys Rasmussen had grown obsessed with the promise of a new science: DNA testing. At the same time, the lead detective on the case retires, leaving a stalled investigation to his successor. For Nuys, this is the opportunity he has been waiting for. He immediately contacts the new person in charge with a plan he believes can turn things around.
Nuys Rasmussen, reading about DNA and the advances that that's brought to criminology, offers to pay for DNA testing, and the department says no.
Correct. It's just not the way the quote-unquote business end of the department works.
Soon after, evidence vanished, and the case file was literally cut in half to save storage space. Still, the Rasmussens persisted.
As a father, he had felt a responsibility to protect her. And the only way that in her death he could protect her was to find out who killed her. He would constantly re-dissect, the information that we knew.
Every time the file was reassigned, they flew from Arizona to Los Angeles to meet the new detectives. Each visit ended the same way: sympathy, no progress, and a folder barely an inch thick.
They put us in an interrogation room, and they came in with a little skinny folder about this big. They did meet with us, but it was also it was like a show.
In 2001, the department finally launched a cold case DNA unit. Sherri's case landed on the desk of criminalist Jennifer Francis. While scanning the evidence list, Francis noticed something bizarre. The report on the bite wound contained only Sherri's DNA profile, even though such samples should yield 2 sources: victim and attacker. It implied Sherri had bitten herself, an impossible scenario. Francis began searching for the missing swab. She noted that the original detective in charge did not collect fingerprints or other important evidence at the scene, but still believed that the forensic team took samples from the wound for analysis.
I checked with our evidence room. They didn't have it. I looked at our property reports. It's not booked.
How could that happen?
Incompetence.
That happened a lot?
Yes.
Refusing to quit, she contacted every coroner in Los Angeles County. After hours of digging through freezer archives, one examiner called back. A damaged envelope, label fading, still held a single glass vial. Tests revealed a second DNA profile, female. That single discovery overturned the long-held theory of 2 male burglars. As Francis read deeper, she came across years of letters from Nuys Rasmussen describing Sherri's stalker and her husband's ex. Francis's theory was beginning to take shape. What if all the clues pointed to a horrifying conclusion, that the 2 were actually one and the same, and that the woman was the one who bit Sherri? When she shared her findings, her superiors dismissed the idea of a female suspect and added a startling detail. John's ex was a police officer.
Well, this plays to everybody's favorite conspiracy theory, that cops
cover for other cops.
No matter what.
You're out of your mind.
Did you tell the detectives that John's ex-girlfriend was a member of the LAPD.
Well, that's how I identified her.
Why do you think it was that detectives didn't look at John's ex-girlfriend?
I think it was because she was a police officer.
Why can't that just be sloppy police work? Why does that have to be a cover-up? Why can't that be just sort of tunnel vision and a rush to judgment?
They're more intelligent than that. You got to give them more credit than that.
Undeterred, Frances kept pressing. To the cold case team, the lab director, the homicide division, even internal affairs, the backlash was swift. Colleagues branded her emotional and unstable, ordered her into counseling, and treated her persistence as defiance. During those sessions, the questions centered not on her well-being, but on what she had uncovered and who she had spoken to. Inside the lab, people mocked her, saying she needed a hobby. Then, in November 2009, a call changed everything. Detective James Nuttall from Robbery Homicide reached out asking about her DNA results. After years of silence, someone was finally listening. Frances told him she no longer believed the robbery narrative and feared the evidence had been tampered with, but stopped short of naming her suspect. Nutt already saw what she saw. The foreign DNA belonged to a woman. He'd also read Nels Rasmussen's letters identifying the same woman, John's ex, Stephanie Lazarus. Quietly, he assembled a small confidential task force, including Frances, determined to expose the truth even if it led straight inside police headquarters. Detective James Nuttall quietly reopens the case. He reviews the 1986 files and realizes how fast investigators once cleared John Ruetten, with barely a single interview. Something didn't add up.
When they said it was a police officer, I went, you're kidding. Absolutely kidding. A police officer committed this crime. I couldn't imagine that.
Nuttall contacted John for an interview.
Now, John, what is your wife's name? Sherri. You didn't harm your wife, did you?
She got everything going. I mean,
Hey, John. Well, I need you to be tough for me, buddy. She's not having any problems with an ex-boyfriend or you with an ex-girlfriend.
No.
You're a pretty good judge of character. Sir, you have absolutely nothing to do with this. I believe your house was burglarized today. Once this person's or that person, whoever was inside, I believe they were trying to steal your stereo and listen to their been through it a lot. John, things happen, okay? I think Sherri came down the stairs. She surprised me. And she was hurt. She was shot. Oh. John, I don't know what it's true. Or 53 for this person, huh? Have a little faith in me. Very successful. I want you. Very, very successful.
For Nuttall, something was amiss in the interview. Why did the detective jump to conclusions? And why did John Ruetten lie? According to Nels and others who worked with Sherri, John's ex-girlfriend was a troubled woman, and Sherri had mentioned it as a warning. What haunted Nuttall was the void left by those accounts. No more evidence, no more questions. Over the course of more than 2 decades, 3 detectives had reopened the case, but no one had ever sat down with John to ask what Nels had said. For Nuttall, it was a mistake he didn't intend to repeat. Nuttall contacts John, now remarried and living in Northern California.
They said, hey, we got a bite mark here, and that could be a female. And then I said, I got to talk to you about Stephanie. And I told him that she went to go see Sherri.
Did you give the name Stephanie Lazarus?
Yeah, I gave him the name, and I said she's a police officer. Do you guys think Stephanie did this?
We have strong suspicion.
One of my concerns is that was never, appears to be recorded.
And we know by
I'm not trying to be inflammatory.
There's a certain level of frustration on our part.
Yeah,
more should have been documented. We're now forced 23 years later to literally almost start over again because we lack the documentation.
During their talk, John finally admits what the original reports missed. Before marrying Sherri, he had rekindled things with Stephanie Lazarus, even knowing she was obsessed with him. At UCLA, she'd stolen his belongings, snuck into his dorm, and refused to let go.
He should have been frank with her instead of leading her on and kept putting fuel to the fire.
He tried to protect himself by
diverting the information about Stephanie. He didn't behave as a husband that loved Sherri.
By now, Lazarus is a veteran LAPD detective working just down the hall from Nuttall himself. To avoid alerting her, he orders quiet surveillance. Men tail her car, collect discarded items. From a thrown-away soda cup, forensic testing confirms the truth. Her DNA matches the female profile from Sherri's bite wound. Nuttall sets a careful trap. He summons Lazarus to a gun-free interview room, telling her she's needed to advise on another suspect. When she walks in, detectives confront her. This time, she's the one under interrogation. After 23 years, the offender inside the LAPD is finally exposed.
Please have a seat. So, this is, I didn't want to bring this up in front of your squad, but do you know John Ruetten?
John Ruetten?
Ruetten.
Oh yeah, I went to school with him.
You did?
Yeah.
Were you guys friends, close friends?
Yeah, we're very close friends. I mean,
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, we dated, you know, I mean, what's this all about?
Well, it's relating to his wife. Did you ever meet her?
Well, I think, God, it's been a long time ago. Yeah, I mean, I don't, you know, again, I mean, what, you know, I don't understand why you're talking about some guy I dated a million years ago.
Well, do you know what happened to his wife?
Yeah, I know she got killed.
Did you ever fight with her?
You mean like we fought?
Yeah. Did you ever duke it out with her?
No, I don't think so. I mean...
You'd remember that, right? That would be pretty...
Yeah, I would think so. I
pretty
mean,
specific.
Yeah, like I said, I mean,
traumatic.
obviously, you know, I mean, it just doesn't sound familiar. I mean, what are they saying? So I fought with her, so now, I mean, they're saying, okay, I fought with her, so I must have killed her. I mean, come on. I mean, that's insane.
Right.
I mean, if you guys are claiming that I'm a suspect, then, you know, I got a problem with, you know, with that. Okay? So, you know, if you're doing this as an interrogation, you're saying, hey, I'm a suspect. Well, now I got a problem with, you know, now you're accusing me of this? Is that what you're saying?
Stephanie, you know you have the right to remain silent. Do you understand?
Yes.
Anything you say may be used against you in court. Do you understand?
Yes.
You have the right to the presence of an attorney before and during any questioning. Do you understand?
Yes.
Do you want to talk to us right now?
No.
All right. Okay.
This is crazy. This is I'm like in shock. I'm totally in...
News reaches the Rasmussen family.
They were kind enough to come to our home and let my parents know that they had made the arrest. I mean, I cried because I was so excited, number one, that justice for my sister, but also for my dad.
Nels was upset with me, and he was very animated. It was sort of like, Detective, where have you been for the last 2 decades? I have explained this to your organization. I've explained this to your investigators.
He was always diverted. He was told repeatedly that he'd been watching too much TV.
Now, everything comes full circle. Jennifer Francis testifies about the retaliation she faced for chasing the truth. Nels explains how his warnings were ignored. John, too, takes the stand, finally able to speak openly about his wife.
The fact that Sherri's death occurred because she met and married me brings me to my knees.
After a 3-week trial, the verdict is swift. Stephanie Lazarus, found responsible for the unlawful death of Sherri Rasmussen. The Rasmussen family feels years of weight lift at once. For the first time, Sherri's name is cleared of every false theory.
The jury in the above entitled action find the defendant, Stephanie Eileen Lazarus, guilty of the crime of murder of Sherri Rasmussen.
It was just like a rush of relief that it's over. Relief for my father that he finally was vindicated and he had his answers.
In 2023, nearly 4 decades later, Lazarus finally confesses, seeking parole. By then, Nels has passed away, but his recorded statement still plays at her hearing, reminding the board of the pain she caused.
If one looks at the damage that she did to my daughter's face, it's almost like she wanted to destroy the beauty that Sherri exuded.
Today, Sherri's legacy lives on through her family. Her nieces followed her path into nursing, inspired by the stories their parents told. One even wore Sherri's wedding dress at her own ceremony, carrying a piece of her aunt's spirit forward.
My mom always told me stories about when Sherri and her were in nursing school and how Sherri really liked the hard cases with the cardio patients. I always thought, well, you know, I can totally see why she would totally love this, the nursing and taking care of people. And I went into nursing school because of my Aunt Sherri.
My youngest daughter, Jessica, got married in February, and my mom said, well, why don't you try on Sherri's wedding dress? She liked Sherri's wedding dress, so my mom said, go ahead. So she took a little bit of her aunt with her on her special day. That's one example of how we keep her in our lives every day.
It took 23 years for justice to catch up. For Sherri Rasmussen's family, closure came too late, but it came. That's the story behind this murder documentary video where loyalty, love, and obsession end in tragedy. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more cases like this. This content has been produced for informative and educational purposes. It does not seek to humiliate or criticize anyone involved. Given the rise of political division and misinformation, showing these events in their correct context helps the public remain well-informed and aware.